Hello, this is Seth at Magnus, and today I'll be walking through the process of uploading a disk image backup to Amazon AWS. This consists of two major parts, the first of which being configuring AWS for the upload, and the second of which is the actual download, upload, and launching of the disk image backup. In addition to our support article on this topic, I'll also be referencing several Amazon pages that guide through the process as well and contain template data that we'll be using. Links to those can also be found on our KB article. If you have any questions throughout this process, feel free to contact us at support@magnusbox.com. Without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we have to do is we have to create a storage bucket on Amazon AWS in order to upload the image files that we restored from Magnusbox. And so to do that, I'm in the AWS Management Console. I can click on All Services, scroll down to the Storage section, and click on S3. And inside the S3 page here, we can go ahead and click Create Bucket. Choose a name for the bucket. I'm going to call mine Disk Image Restore, MB. You can leave all the settings at their default value, and then go ahead and click Create Bucket at the bottom of the page. And you should get a confirmation at the top of the screen confirming the S3 bucket was created. Next, we'll need to install the AWS command line interface. This can be downloaded for both Windows and Mac from their website, aws.amazon.com/CLI. I'm going to show both installation routes since it does differ slightly based on the platform. Alright, so Mac is on the left, Windows on the right, and I'm just going to go ahead and click on the respective download link for both platforms. The installer will open, and it's going to guide you through the installation process just like any other installer. This page here is just asking you to accept the license agreement, and the next page is asking you where you want to install it. In my case, the default location will work just fine. And so it's going to prompt for an administrator authentication before it runs, and then it will begin installing the required package files for the command line interface. Alright, and I just finished installing. And as a final check, let's make sure that the command line interface actually works. To do this, we can open up the command prompt in Windows by typing CMD in the Start menu, and on a Mac, opening Spotlight and typing Terminal. Next, we'll enter the command AWS, followed by a space, 2 hyphens, and the word version. After that, it should display the current version of the AWS command line interface. Now with the command line interface installed, let's create a user. And so I'm back in the AWS Management Console. I'm going to go ahead and expand the All Services dropdown. Then I'm going to scroll down to the Security, Identity, and Compliance section and click on IAM. In the IAM dashboard, we can click on Users to get to the Users page, and then we'll go ahead and add a user with the blue button at the top of the screen. You can name your user whatever you want. I'm just going to name mine MB Disk Image, so I know that it's the user being used for the disk image. Next, and probably the most important part, is to enable programmatic access. This ensures a secret key ID and secret access key are generated. In the permission page here, I'm going to attach the permissions for this user directly, and I'm going to select the top 3 administrator access types. I'm going to skip the tags section, and then in the review section, just make sure that you have that programmatic access with the access key selected, and then you can go ahead and create the user. Once you're on this page, it'll confirm that the user was created. Make sure you don't leave this page too quickly, since this is the only page you'll be able to view your access key ID and secret access key. I usually recommend downloading the CSV file provided. That way you can reference it later if needed. While I have this page open, I'm going to open the Windows command prompt to configure the command line interface to point to this user. On the Mac side, the commands are the exact same, so I'm only going to show the Windows perspective. To get started, I'm going to type AWS followed by a space and the word configure. This is going to prompt for 4 different fields, the first of which is that access key ID. I'm going to switch back to the browser tab and copy it directly from the create user confirmation page and paste it into the command prompt by right-clicking. The next field is the secret access key. This is also listed in the browser page. I'm going to click the show button, and I'm going to copy the secret access key as well and paste it into the command prompt by right-clicking. The third field is going to ask for the default region name. You don't have to specify anything here, and so I'm going to leave this blank and press enter to move on to the next field. And the fourth and final field is going to ask for the default output format. We'll want to use Json as the default. After that, we've successfully configured the AWS command line interface. Next, we're going to want to create a service role for AWS in order to import and upload our disk image. And so to do that, I'm on Amazon's required service role VM import export page, which is found on our KB article. And I'm specifically on the required service role section. To do this, we're going to have to create 2 text files, the first of which is called trustpolicy.json. And so to do this, I'm going to use TextEdit, which is the built-in text editor on Mac, and Notepad on Windows, which is also built in. On Mac, make sure the text file is a plain text file, which can be accessed in the Format menu. Next, I'm going to copy the template provided by Amazon and paste it into the text file. Nothing in this file has to be modified, so it's ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and save it and call it trustpolicy.json, just like Amazon recommends. On Mac, TextEdit is going to make sure that you want to use the JSON extension, and we do. After saving it, we're going to want to use the command line interface to upload this file to AWS. In step 2, the command that we'll use to upload this file is highlighted in green. You'll notice at the end of the command there's a red portion. Any red portions throughout the Amazon documentation has to be replaced and customized for the individual situation. And so I'm going to copy that, paste it into the command prompt on Windows by right-clicking, and paste it into terminal on Mac. And then I'm going to delete the template file path that Amazon put in place. The easiest way to populate the file path to the trust policy file is to go to the File Explorer and then drag and drop the file onto the terminal window or command prompt window. On Mac, in the beginning, it might look a little bit weird as it has 3 forward slashes, but that is normal. It'll also add a space at the end of the file, which you'll have to delete, and then end the command in a quotation mark for both Mac and Windows. After pressing enter, you'll get a confirmation that the role was created, and now we can add the permissions for this role. This is also found in the Amazon documentation in a file called rolepolicy.json. Again, I'm going to use TextEdit on Mac and Notepad on Windows to paste in the contents of this file, making sure that it's a plain text format on Mac. This file does require customization, changing the disk image file bucket and export bucket to the S3 instance we created earlier. Having replaced all 4 parameters with the correct S3 bucket name, we are ready to move on. One thing to note is you do want to make sure that the forward slash and asterisk are still in the appropriate spots in the file. Those should not be replaced. With that taken care of, we can go ahead and save the file. We want to save it as role-policy.json. On Mac, I had already saved it in advance as it was giving me some issues, so if there's any issues, you may want to try saving it before customizing the file. We can go ahead and close that out and scroll down to step 6, which will give us the command to assign the policy that we just created to the VM import role that we created earlier. Once again, I'm going to copy that and paste it into terminal on Mac and command prompt on Windows, again by right-clicking. I want to replace that red file name, just as before, with the appropriate role policy file. Again, removing everything up to the file : // Again, I'm going to drag the file into the command prompt to populate that full file path, making sure to delete the space on Mac, and ending the file with a quotation mark for both Mac and Windows. Now that we have Amazon AWS set up along with the required service role and the command line interface, we can begin the upload and configuration of the actual image files. Just a couple of things to note before we get started. First, if the computer that you're attempting to restore completely failed and you can no longer access it, you'll have to install Magnus on an office computer or some other laptop or endpoint in order to pull those Vmbk files down from the cloud. Make sure you log in as the user whose profile contains the device you're attempting to restore. And you'll also want to make sure that the Show Items from Other Devices checkmark is also selected in the left-hand corner of the pop-up dialog. And second, we want to restore the disk image backup as virtual disk files. Now that we have those files restored, just in this restore folder, both on Mac and Windows, we've got 4 files that were generated from the restore process, 3 of which are binary files, and then the 4th one, the disk.vmdk file, is a text description file. You may have more Vmbk files if you had more disks or partitions, but in this case I just have the C drive, so I just have 3 binary files followed by that 4th text description file. You can actually open the disk.vmbk file on Windows with Notepad, on Mac with TextEdit, just to view the contents of the file. There's a lot of header information and metadata, but at the bottom of the file there's also some useful information about what each binary file represents. So we can see here that the disk_F0000 and 0002 are raw byte ranges, whereas disk_F0001 is the actual C partition. And so if you were in a crunch for time, you could simply upload the 0001 file to Amazon and skip the combination process. But if you have multiple partitions that need to be included in the instance, you'll want to combine the files and upload a single file to AWS. For the sake of being thorough, I'm going to run through the Vmbk combination process now on both Mac and Windows. By default, both command line interfaces open up in the home directory, and so they don't have access to these Vmbk files yet. So to navigate to that directory, I'm going to type in the cd command in both Mac and Windows, followed by a space. And then I'm going to drag and drop the parent folder into the command prompt and then press enter. That'll get us inside that folder. And we can actually verify that we're inside that folder by running an ls command on Mac or a dir command on Windows to confirm that those files are visible to the command prompt session. On Mac, we're going to want to use the cat command to concatenate the 3 files into one. And so I'm going to type cat followed by a space and then the first file name. And between each file name, I'm going to separate it with a space and then just type the next file name as well. Again, taking care not to include the disk.vmdk file, only the disk_f vmdk files. You can use tab to autocomplete the file name. And after you've typed in all the partitions that you want to combine, we're going to type the greater than sign, followed by a space, and then diskname.vmdk, which will be the file name of the combined vmdk binary file. As we press enter, we can see that file begin to generate. Switching over to Windows, we're going to want to type cmd followed by a space, /c, followed by another space, followed by the copy command, again, followed by a space, and the /b operator to specify binary files, followed by another space. Now we can start specifying the vmdk file names. On Windows, each file name is preceded by a period, a backslash, and then the actual name of the vmdk file. Also on Windows, instead of separating by a space, we're going to separate with a plus symbol between each file name. Again, after the plus, we're going to want to type that period, backslash, and then the next file name. Just like on Mac, we can autocomplete the rest of the file name like the extension with the tab key. And we'll want to specify all 3 vmdk files in this case, or as many as you have that you want to combine. Finally, we're going to want to specify the file name for the combined image file. So to do that, I'm going to type a space, followed by diskname.vmdk. I'm going to go ahead and press enter. After that, you can see how the command progresses, combining each file. After that completes, we can move on to the next step. Alright, having finished that, we now have a combined diskname.vmdk file that we can upload to Amazon S3. There are 2 ways to do this. You can upload it through the graphical browser interface, through the control dashboard on Amazon AWS. However, there is a limitation with this method. It's currently capped at 160 gigabytes. So if your image file or combination of image files exceeds 160 gigabytes, you'll have to use the command line interface. I'm going to be using the command line interface, so I'll switch over to both Mac and Windows to do that process. Alright, so I have command prompt back open in Windows and terminal open in Mac. Again, I want to make sure I'm in the correct directory, so I'm going to type the cd command followed by a space and drag in the parent folder of my disk images into the command prompt or terminal window and press enter. Now that I'm in that directory, I can begin the upload process. To this, I'm going to type AWS space S3 space CP to specify the copy command. And then I'm going to specify the diskname.vmbk file. On Mac, you can just type the file name as is, but on Windows, you'll need to put a period and backslash in front of the diskname.vmbk file. To specify the destination, I'm going to type S3 : and the name of my bucket, which is disk image restore MB. And I'm also going to put this in a subfolder called image. I'll end the command with a / and press enter to begin the upload. Okay, and so long as you don't get any error messages in the upload succeeded. We can verify the contents by typing AWS S3 LS and then the name of the bucket, or going to the AWS Web Console and looking at the bucket image that way as well. Now we can convert the uploaded Vmbk file to a launchable instance on AWS. To do this, we'll have to create a Diskcontainer.json file, the contents of which can be found in our KB article. So I'll copy the template data here, open a Notepad document on Windows and a text document on Mac. Again, on Mac, make sure that you make the document a plain text file. Next, we'll want to replace bucket name with the name of our bucket. In this case, it's disk image restore MB. And then we'll also want to replace the subfolder, which in our case is image, but it may be different for your case. After that, we can go ahead and save the file. Again, calling it diskcontainer.json. On Mac, once again, it'll ask you to confirm that you want to use the .json extension, which we do. With that file created, we can run the command to convert the Vmbk file into a bootable instance for AWS. The command can be found in our KB article as well. I'm only going to copy the first portion of it since we do have to customize it a little bit. I'll paste that into terminal and command prompt respectively. And then I'm using US East 2, but if you're using a different region, you'd obviously enter that here. Next, I'm going to type 2 hyphens followed by the Diskcontainers flag. And to use the contents of the file that we just created, I'm going to type a quote followed by the word file, a colon, and 2 /. And then I'm going to drag that newly created Diskcontainer file into the terminal window on Mac and the command prompt window on Windows. Finally, I'll end the command with a quote, again removing the extra space on Mac, and press enter. And we can see here that we get a confirmation that the conversion process has started. Make sure to take note of the AMI ID that's given at the top of the output, as that will be used throughout the rest of the process. To check the status of the conversion process, we can use another command, also found in our KB article. So I'll scroll down a little bit and copy that command all the way up to the 4 X's in the AMI part. I'll paste that into terminal on Mac and the command prompt on Windows. And I'll replace the 4 X's with the correct AMI ID from the previous step. You can see here I wrote mine down in Notepad on Windows. I'm just copying it directly from Mac from the previous command. And then after that, we'll want to specify the region. Again, I'm using US East 2. And that'll finish the command. So if I go ahead and press enter, we can get a status update regarding the process. We will want to wait until the status reads completed. Alright, and sometime later, I ran that command again and see that the status is now completed. And so we can begin launching the instance in AWS. To do this, we'll have to open up the AWS Management Console in the browser. So I'll switch to that. We're going to want to go to Services and EC2 under the Compute section. In the left sidebar, scroll down to the AMIs page, and this will list any and all AMI import objects. I can see here that I've got 2. I'm going to compare the AMI ID to the one that I wrote down in Notepad, starting with 07BC. It looks like this second AMI is the correct one. Now I'm going to expand the column a little bit just to make sure. And indeed it is, so I'm going to select that one and click Launch in the upper left-hand corner. It's going to ask me what type of instance I'd like to launch. You can select different PC builds with different amounts of memory and processing power. I'm going to stick with the free tier option and click Review and Launch. It's going to ask you one more time to confirm all the settings, and then you can go ahead and launch the instance by clicking Launch. Finally, it's going to ask how you'd like to authenticate with the instance. I have an existing key pair set up, so I'm going to stick with that, but you can go ahead and create a new one if you'd like as well. And with that, you have successfully launched the instance. It takes around 5 minutes for everything to initialize before you can connect. And after a few minutes of waiting, we can go ahead and connect. I'm in the Instances page from the left-hand sidebar. I'm going to go ahead and click on my instance ID to open up the properties, and I'm going to go ahead and click Connect. There's a couple different ways you can connect to the instance. I'm going to be using the Remote Desktop protocol. I'm going to download the Remote Desktop file as provided by AWS. If this is the first time you've generated a key pair for authentication, you'll be able to get your password. However, as you can see here, this isn't my first time I use that existing key pair, and so I'm unable to access that password directly. So if you do create a new key pair and you click Get Password, make sure that you write it down and save it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the downloaded file to open up the remote desktop. Windows is going to ask me if I want to connect, which I do. It's going to prompt me for my password, which I generated at an earlier date. So I'll enter that now. Just as a small aside, this process is the exact same on a Mac. You can download Microsoft's remote desktop tool and connect to the instance that way as well. Once I have that entered, I can go ahead and click OK to authenticate. It's going to ask me if I want to trust their certificate. I'll just click yes. And with that, the remote desktop is going to connect to the instance, which concludes the process of uploading a disk image backup to Amazon AWS. If you have any questions, or if you run into any trouble, feel free to contact us at support@magnusbox.com. Thank you.